I'm sitting again with the beautiful Tamalyn Dallal, and we're going to talk about her book, 40 Days and 1001 Nights. Yes, Tamalyn, this book is not just a story, it's a lived experience. And you spent 40 days immersed in different Islamic cultures, not as a visitor, but as someone willing to truly live with the people, to share their daily life, their music, and their rhythm. And what I love the most is how dance became a bridge. In this book, you share this, and it's a way also that you know, what you wrote is how to connect beyond language and beyond differences and into something so deeply human. So this book gently dissolves fear and replaces it with understanding, connection, and shared experience. So I got two questions for you.
Hmm.
So the first one is what inspired you to take this journey of living 40 days in each place instead of just simply visiting? And my second question is after living so closely with these cultures and communities, what changed the most in how you see people in the world?
Okay. The first question, I had been a dancer for many, many years. And of course, that meant that I was interacting with a lot of Muslim people, musicians, friends, dancers, clients that I danced for their weddings, students. And when 9/11 happened and Muslims were being demonized, and I was like, this is not really making sense, And yeah, and then when we decided to attack Iraq, and I remember Bush said they did it to us in 9/11, and now, you know, like that gave us permission to go to Iraq. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is not making sense to me because the people that did 9/11 were not Iraqi. They were all Muslim, but there's all kinds. We're all a lot of people are Christian, a lot of people are Jewish, a lot of people are a lot of things. It doesn't put everybody in the same basket. It I had a lot of doubts since then, since 2003. And then in 2004, I wanted to go to this festival called Ahlan wa Sahlan in Egypt, and I was going for the first time, and people were saying I was going to get beheaded, and people were so worried. It was nuts. I was just like, what the heck does Egypt have to do with any of this? And there had been some people, somebody got beheaded somewhere in Iraq, and I think it was a journalist or something. I can't remember. But anyway, they thought I was going to go to Egypt to the Ahlan wa Sahlan festival and get beheaded. And I'm like, people are crazy in this country. So then I thought of this idea of going to different Muslim countries and just traveling around and meeting people and writing my travel journals. And it wasn't until like 2005 that it finally materialized because it was going to be really hard to run my studio and teach workshops and, you know, travel around the world and write this book. And where was I going to get the money to do the traveling and to produce a book? I didn't know how this was going to happen. And then finally, in 2005, I just decided to take the plunge. There were some things happening at home and this and that, and I was like, I'm I was in Miami, I had my school. I said, I need to go to Seattle and spend time with my parents because they're turning 80, and I can't add that to the whole thing. So how about I move to Seattle, spend time with my parents, teach workshops to support my travels for 40 days and 1,001 nights. I still didn't know where I was going to get all that money, but I said, I just need to take a leap of faith and take the plunge and do it. So in November of 2005, I I decided to go someplace in Southeast Asia that's Muslim. I was going to go to Malaysia, where I had already been, um, but then that kind of fell through. And I was going to be writing about the royalty in Malaysia because some of them I had contact with, and they said when not Mardi Gras, when Ramadan starts, um, I can't, I have to go. And I'm like, well, Ramadan starts during my 40 days. So I made a quick decision to go to Indonesia instead, but I knew nothing about Indonesia, like zero. And so that's what I did. And that was the best thing. Actually, the best way to start the book was to start from nothing. Because part of it is it's not like a scholar going to write about things that they're an expert in. It's like somebody like any of us going to a Muslim country, and Indonesia is the biggest, has the highest Muslim population of any country in the world. So going to a Muslim country that I know nothing about, I don't know how to act, I don't know how to dress, I don't know anything. And so, because I got away with a lot more when I was in Malaysia. So when I went to Indonesia, I thought, well, it's Asia. I'll wear my spaghetti strap tops and I'll do this and that. And no, it's not that way. You dress covered, you behave certain ways appropriately, and so forth. But it was all meant to be. I reread the book in the last 2 days. It took me 2 whole days, locked away rereading my book. And it's very interesting, the experience. It's fresh, you know, just going from like I flew to Singapore because I knew I could teach a workshop there. And I left my belly dance stuff there. And I got on a boat and I'm like, how can I get to Indonesia? Well, I'll go on this boat. It was an industrial island I went to. But luckily, I met somebody that really helped orient me to places to go, things to do, people to meet. Without him, his name was Arif. Without him, it wouldn't have been the same story at all. And the Indonesia section is one of my favorite sections, actually. So then that's what made me make the decision, actually, is because I felt I had to. I couldn't just be like, knowing that a lot of stuff we hear on the news is not true. I mean, I could say, oh, that's not true. I know Muslim people, they're not like that. But, nobody has to believe me. So if I just go and travel around and write about how the people were, I mean, for all I know, they could be a bunch of terrorists. I'll write it down. But I wasn't looking for terrorists and I didn't find any terrorists. They didn't find me. It just wasn't a part of the conversation or the daily life. So I continued, like I would go and teach workshops, do some shows, stay, visit my parents, and then go to another place. So I went to the Siwa Oasis in Egypt. I'd already been there, but it was way different going there as staying for 40 days and staying, meeting so many people. It was much deeper. And then I went to Zanzibar, another place I knew nothing about. And it was also a very deep connection there. I went to Jordan. I actually love that section. When I was there, it wasn't a lot to do because there was a war in Lebanon. Lebanon was being attacked by Israel and they were in mourning. So I thought, you know, I mean, while I was there, I was like, I'm really digging to try to find people and things to do because there's no festivities, no nothing. But it's a really interesting read. And then I went to Xinjiang in Western China. I love that section too. It's it's really a window on some place that very few people go to. And each of these countries was completely different from the last. It wasn't just like, here's 20% of the world and they're Muslim and they're all the same. There was no monolith. You know, each human being was different, each country was different, each culture. It was so fascinating. And that's why I think it's a really important book to read. And it was super important for me. Like my perspective on life changed. I was at this point where I had been a belly dancer, having a school, doing gigs on the weekends, lots of gigs. I was in show business. And, you know, you had to look a certain way. You had to wear costumes that were what people expected of you. Um, you had to fit the stereotype. And I wanted to, I wanted to rise above that too. So I had already been doing theater shows, creating theater shows. And then the rest of the time I was still teaching my classes and doing my commercial shows. And then I was in the Belly Dance Superstars in their first DVD and their first couple of shows. And that was also very glitzy. So when I did this project, which actually took 2 years from start to finish, I started in November 2005. I finished the first printing came out in October 2007 because it's a whole lot of work, not just the traveling and all that, the editing, hiring people to edit, getting the cover done, getting, going over the book like dozens of times. It was incredible. So when I when I finished it, first of all, it was a project that I lived with in my heart for 2 years. I lived that project no matter what else I was doing. Um, I saw the dance in the context of people doing this for joy rather than show business. And it was a really bizarre disconnect, actually, to go from traveling in any of the countries that I was writing about, where I was dressed conservative and we were dancing a lot. And then coming back and being teaching a workshop and being on a stage and, you know, a totally different context where there was nobody Middle Eastern taking part in any of it. And I was like going from, yeah, from cultural to not cultural, representing somebody else's culture that doesn't have anybody from the culture around it. And that was absolutely bizarre, actually. It was such a, like my head would spin every time that I would go back and forth in this. And then I'd go home and spend time with my family, and they didn't really, they weren't too aware of any of what my life was like. There's like, yeah, Tammy's, traveling around writing a book, and then she's traveling around dancing. Oh, well, so it was a total three disconnects, but it really changed me a lot, actually, because I learned a lot. I ended up with a lot of friends in certain places, I maintained the friendship. It was really hard in Jordan for some reason, like, because back then we didn't have Facebook was just beginning. I didn't use it back then yet. Um, we had some email, but communication was hard. So I ended up going back to the Siwa Oasis many, many times and having very close friends there, and also Zanzibar, doing lots of projects in Zanzibar. I changed after the book was written and after the book came out. I saw a lot more in both places. And there are things that I could look at and go, wait a minute, I would change this or I would add to this. But that always happens when you write a book. You're never finished.
I might have a third question. I think I do. How did that actually change your dance?
Oh, in a big way because I felt it in my body. I felt, you know, in certain places, especially in Africa, I felt the pull of the earth. And that's why I started this idea of doing the lower body movements, everything from the chest down through the earth and through my feet, because I I learned that just by observing and feeling it about the feet, what I call magic muscle, which is, you know, deep inside the pelvic area. And, you know, later on, I learned about long belly, short belly, which is, these are three concepts that I came up with to try to describe the things I felt in my body after my travels. And then while I was in Xinjiang and also Indonesia, I noticed Indonesia, they use lots and lots of hands and face and eyes and head. And in Xinjiang, also, oh my gosh, is so elevated and lifted and skyward. And I'm like, if you put those two together, you have so many qualities that work with our dance. And my dance changed a lot. I think especially I got the earthiness because I was more lifted and balletic before I started the project. And I ended up much more earthy afterwards. Yeah. And then trying to translate that to my students in different parts of the world who had never experienced that. Like, you know, later, next time we're going to talk about China, which I worked in China for many, many years for extended periods of time. And when the dancers were new, they weren't very grounded. And I used some of the techniques that I observed on my travels to get people grounded, and they changed. So not only did I change, but my students changed.
Ah, wonderful. Tamalyn, thank you so much. I mean, your story reminds us that when we like truly connect with people, fear fades.
Mhm.
And understanding, also the word understanding begins. And I'm so grateful
Yes.
that you're sharing this with us, and thank you so much for being with us.
I do feel one more thing I want to add. This is very timely, this book, even though it was finished almost 20 years ago, is very timely today because I look, for example, I look at Jordan. When I was there, it was before ISIS was in Syria. It was before a lot of things happened. And I'm like, you know, people were just mixing, like backpackers and local people and people that came from war-torn countries. We're just mixing, like in the hotel where I lived,
Mm.
you know, and we were just people. And I think like now we have the onslaught of social media telling us from all sides what to think, and then scandals all the time and all this stress. But then, and we don't really know the people we're hearing about, no matter who it is, whether it's people from the Middle East or people from somewhere else or from somebody else from our own country. We're just, everybody's divided up and we think we know about other people and we don't because we never spend time with them. We spend time on the internet.
And it's true, like, and that's why this book is timeless because you decided to make a choice to go experience and find your own truth. And I think today, thinking that our truth is on social media, it's that's not it. So it's
It
really
gets
it's yeah.
it gets distorted, trust me. When I'm reading this, I'm like, it's so interesting. And also when I embarked on this project, I was not an expert of anything. You know, I was an expert of dancing at parties and um, teaching my students or running my school, whatever, if that can be an expert. But um, like sometimes there's confusion you know, thinking that I'm a dance anthropologist or that I'm, you know, positioning myself as an expert at something. No, be, we could all just go and open our eyes and travel around. I mean, not that we could or our lives would allow us, but this is something that, you know, I just wrote down what I saw and what I experienced. And, you know, they're my experiences, my truths, but I can tell you they're pretty true. Yeah. And so it leaned heavily toward dance and food and music, although the book wasn't originally supposed to be about that. It was just about meeting people, which I met a lot of people. But whenever I found dance and food and music, believe me, I wrote it down. So it leans heavily toward that. So I think it's not only of interest to everyday people, but to dancers.
Yes, and you know, again, going back to the connection, you make connection with people, and those things, dance, music, food, it's so nurturing to the soul. And I think that's what people need more is, to know that there's so much goodness out there, and
Yes.
having connection, just us doing this, this interview, um, I feel like there's a lotus flower just, blooming because we're planting seed in a way where there's so much love to be shared, and so and we're seeing a lot of fear, but there's so much love out there too. And so I'm just grateful that I have these interviews with you and that we do there's goodness out there through the social media too, but it's a way of learning how to discern and find your truth through
Yes.
discerning. Yeah.
And when you read the book, there's like so much hospitality and generosity that, like, I think we're hospitable and generous in the United States, but some places I went, it's just the people, oh my gosh, they were so hospitable and so kind.
Hmm.
And of course, I ran into you know, the occasional nut job or you know, it's not like everything was peaches and cream, no. But, you know, in general, yeah, the people were amazing.
Oh. Well, thank you, and I can't wait to see you at the next interview. Your life is really like I'm so happy we get the chance to share this, and we're getting feedback from people that saying that they enjoying the story because a lot of people can't, or they have their own journey, and they they don't have the experience that you have. And so for you to kind of share this with us is quite, amazing, and we get to go through the journey with you through your story, and that's why stories are just beautiful. Because
Thank you.
feel it, we do feel and you're such a great, you're so good at sharing your story. So again, thank you.
Thank you so much for making this happen. Also, I want to make sure everybody knows, oh, a couple of things I didn't say, that this book is available as well as that they told me I couldn't on my website. Um, and these things are not available, but it was a whole project that I did. The book wouldn't have paid for itself. I ended up with a video camera, just videotaping stuff and putting it to music and made a DVD, which, you know, I no longer produce them, but I was, you know, traveling around with that for many years. And then I made a show inspired by the travels and it was all called 40 Days and 1001 Nights. I also made a music CD, but I don't have any copies of it, and I can't find my one last copy that I have left, so I can't show it to you. But it was a multi-pronged project so that it could pay for itself by selling these other things, which were actually easier to carry and easier to sell. But I, you know, the book it's in 5 sections, and each section is a story in itself. So it really doesn't take long. You don't have to read it all at once. You can be like, oh, I think I will go to Zanzibar. Okay. No, I think I'll go to Indonesia. No, I think I'll go to, you know, whichever place you're most curious about, you just go to first.
That's great. And so is your DVD like we could get your DVD or can is it stream?
No, the only place it's streaming is on Datura Online, and it's only for members. It's
Oh.
free for members, but it's only for members. Yeah, so
Do
I
you have
wish,
any do you think you'll maybe do that show again, the theater?
I don't know, because I still had, well, I didn't have my school. I passed it to Boshenka, but we still had all the same people back then. So I had the people to do it. Now it probably won't happen.
Mm. Okay, so we have to go to Datura to watch the
To watch
this-
the
the show.
first, yeah, but not the show, but the DVD about my travels.
Okay, the
The
show.
show, I don't know. I'll have to see if I can get it and if people can maybe order it on Google Drive or something.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, you're gonna have to put it on a stream so we could, could stream it. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, we could keep talking and talking, but we'll end there. And again, there's so much to share. And our next interview will be, I guess, China. We're going to China.
Yes, we're going to China next. It's a biggie.
Okay, thank you so much. Big love and
Thank
hug.
you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.